It was a seemingly ordinary Tuesday at the Carmel Bay Bistro, a quaint establishment nestled in the heart of Carmel by the Sea, California. But ordinary days have a way of becoming extraordinary when kindness clashes with cruelty, especially when there's someone watching from the shadows. On this particular afternoon, a woman named Karen Jenkins would learn that lesson the hard way, completely unaware that her actions were being observed by none other than Clint Eastwood himself. Comment where you're watching from today as we dive into this incredible true story of disrespect, dignity, and an unexpected defender. The Carmel Bay Bistro had earned its reputation not just for its delectable coastal cuisine, but for its inclusive hiring practices. Among its dedicated staff was 23-year-old Sophia Martinez, a young woman with Down syndrome whose warm smile and genuine enthusiasm had made her a favorite among regular patrons. Sophia had overcome countless obstacles to secure this job, working twice as hard as others might need to, perfecting her skills despite those who had doubted her capabilities. The restaurant buzzed with the gentle hum of lunchtime conversation, silverware clinking against fine china, and the savory aromas of freshly prepared seafood wafting from the kitchen. Sunshine streamed through the large bay windows, illuminating the rustic wooden tables and nautical-themed decor. In a corner booth, partially obscured by an ornamental palm, sat a man whose weathered face and piercing gaze had graced movie screens for generations. Clint Eastwood, former mayor of Carmel and legendary actor, was enjoying a quiet meal alone, his presence respectfully acknowledged, but not disturbed by the staff who knew him well. It was into this peaceful scene that Karen Jenkins entered, designer handbag swinging from her arm, oversized sunglasses perched atop her meticulously highlighted hair. She was accompanied by 3 friends, women cut from the same expensive cloth, their laughter a touch too loud, their entitlement preceding them like an invisible shield. They were seated at a table in the center of the restaurant, commanding attention without earning it. Sophia approached their table with her characteristic enthusiasm, hands clasped together, as she greeted them with a genuine smile that reached her almond-shaped eyes. "Good afternoon, ladies. Welcome to Carmel Bay Bistro. My name is Sophia, and I'll be your server today. Can I start you off with some drinks?" Karen's gaze lifted slowly, her eyes narrowing as they settled on Sophia's face. A flicker of something cold and dismissive crossed her features, a look that had likely withered many service workers before. "You're going to be our waitress?" The question hung in the air, loaded with unspoken judgment. "Yes, ma'am," Sophia nodded eagerly, pulling out her notepad. "Our specials today are grilled swordfish with lemon caper sauce and—" "No, I don't think so," Karen interrupted, her voice sharp enough to cut through nearby conversations. "Can we get someone else? Someone more qualified?" Her friends exchanged glances, a mixture of embarrassment and complicity in their expressions. Sophia's smile faltered only slightly, her training and natural resilience helping her maintain her composure. "I assure you, I'm fully trained and happy to help with anything you need." Karen leaned back in her chair, making a show of speaking to her friends, rather than addressing Sophia directly. "I don't want to spend my money at a place where they let just anyone serve customers. What if she gets our order wrong? What if she can't handle carrying plates? This is ridiculous." Several diners nearby began to take notice of the exchange, discomfort evident in their postures. In his corner booth, Clint Eastwood set down his fork, his legendary squint intensifying as he observed the scene unfolding. The restaurant manager, David Chen, had noticed the commotion and made his way over. "Is everything all right here, ladies?" Karen straightened up, sensing an opportunity to elevate her complaint. "Actually, no. We'd like a different server. No offense, but we're celebrating today and want to make sure our experience is optimal." She emphasized the last word while glancing pointedly at Sophia, who stood with her notepad clutched against her chest, her eyes now downcast. David's expression remained professional, though a muscle twitched in his jaw. "Sophia is one of our most valued team members, ma'am. She's been with us for 3 years and knows our menu inside and out. I can personally vouch for her excellent service." "Look," Karen's voice rose, drawing even more attention. "I'm the customer here, and the customer is always right. I'm not comfortable with her serving us, and that should be enough. I don't need to explain myself." At a nearby table, An elderly couple exchanged disgusted looks. The husband half rose from his seat, clearly contemplating saying something, but his wife placed a restraining hand on his arm. This wasn't their battle to fight, not yet, anyway. Sophia, still standing beside the table, spoke up softly. "It's okay, Mr. Chen. I can ask Megan to take over this table." Her dignity in the face of such blatant discrimination was palpable, making Karen's behavior seem all the more reprehensible by contrast. But David shook his head firmly. "That won't be necessary, Sophia." He turned back to Karen and her friends, his voice low but unwavering. "Ma'am, at Carmel Bay Bistro, we pride ourselves on inclusivity and respect for all our staff members. Sophia is an excellent server who deserves the same respect we show all our employees. If you're uncomfortable with our values, perhaps another establishment would better suit your needs today." Karen's face flushed red. "Are you seriously choosing her over paying customers? Do you know how much money we were planning to spend here? This is outrageous. I want to speak to the owner." Little did Karen know that the owner of this particular restaurant was sitting just a few tables away, witnessing every moment of her tirade. Clint Eastwood continued to observe silently, his weathered face impassive, but his eyes alive with a slow burning indignation that those familiar with his films would recognize all too well. As the confrontation escalated, other diners began to shift uncomfortably in their seats. Some openly glared at Karen's table, while others offered sympathetic glances towards Sophia, who maintained her composure with remarkable grace. The tension in the restaurant had become almost tangible, like the gathering electricity before a storm. Karen, emboldened rather than chastened by the manager's response, raised her voice even further. "This is discrimination against customers. You can't treat us this way. I'll have you know my husband is a lawyer, and we'll see how smug you are when I slap this place with a lawsuit." Her friends, seemingly less comfortable with the spectacle they were now part of, began to murmur among themselves. One of them tugged gently at Karen's sleeve, suggesting perhaps they should leave. But Karen shook her off, too invested in her righteous indignation to back down now. What none of them realized was that this moment would soon become a turning point, not just in Karen's day, but in her entire perspective on privilege, respect, and the quiet dignity of those she had been too quick to dismiss. Because while she thought she was punching down at an easy target, she had no idea who was watching, and what was about to unfold would leave everyone in the restaurant with a story they would tell for years to come. The atmosphere in the Carmel Bay Bistro had transformed from relaxed to razor-edged in a matter of minutes. Karen's outburst hung in the air like a thundercloud, casting a shadow over what had been a pleasant afternoon. Other diners exchanged uncomfortable glances, their meals temporarily forgotten as the drama unfolded before them. In his corner booth, Clint Eastwood's expression hardened, the lines in his weathered face deepening as he observed the scene with mounting disapproval. Manager David Chen stood his ground, shoulders squared and voice steady despite Karen's escalating threats. "Ma'am, I understand you're upset, but I must ask you to lower your voice. You're disturbing our other guests." "Oh, I'm disturbing them?" Karen scoffed, gesturing dramatically toward Sophia. "What about how I'm being disturbed? I came here for a nice lunch, not to be part of some charity project where they let people like her wait tables." The cruelty of her words seemed to physically impact Sophia, whose hands began to tremble slightly as she clutched her notepad. Yet, remarkably, she maintained her composure, her chin lifted in quiet dignity that stood in stark contrast to Karen's loud indignation. One of Karen's friends, a woman with a sleek bob and uncomfortable expression, touched her arm. "Karen, maybe we should just go somewhere else." "No!" Karen shook off the suggestion, her designer bracelet jangling. "Why should we leave? We have every right to be here and to expect proper service." She turned back to David with renewed venom. "I want to speak to the owner right now. Not the manager, the owner." David hesitated, his gaze flickering briefly toward the corner booth where Eastwood sat, now fully attentive to the confrontation. "The owner isn't available at the moment, ma'am." A few tables away, an older gentleman in a fishing cap leaned toward his wife. "That poor girl," he whispered, nodding toward Sophia. "Standing there taking that abuse when she's done nothing wrong." His wife nodded, her lips pressed into a thin line of disapproval. Someone ought to say something. Meanwhile, Sophia took a deep breath and made one more attempt at professional courtesy. Ma'am, I understand if you're not comfortable with me serving you, but please know that I've been trained extensively. I graduated from our community college's hospitality program with honors, and I don't care if you graduated from Harvard, Karen interrupted, her voice dripping with condescension. Some jobs just aren't meant for everyone. Do you understand what I'm saying, or do I need to spell it out for you? A collective intake of breath swept through the restaurant at this naked cruelty. Even Karen's friends looked mortified now, one of them busying herself with her napkin, while another suddenly became intensely interested in her water glass. The third friend, the one who had suggested leaving, now stood up. Karen, this is too much. I'm not comfortable with this. Karen looked up, betrayal flashing across her face. Seriously, Michelle? You're taking her side? There shouldn't be sides, Michelle replied quietly. This is supposed to be lunch, not a battleground. As Michelle gathered her purse and prepared to leave, something unexpected happened. Sophia, despite being the target of such unwarranted cruelty, spoke up. Please don't leave because of me. I can ask another server to help you. The simple kindness of this offer, extended despite the abuse she had endured, seemed to pierce through the tension. Michelle paused, looking at Sophia with newfound respect, then at Karen with unmistakable disappointment. No, honey, you're not the problem here. David Chen seized this moment to try once more for de-escalation. Ladies, I suggest we all take a breath. If you'd like to stay, we're happy to serve you, but we must insist on mutual respect for all our staff. Karen, now abandoned by one friend and facing visible discomfort from the others, seemed to grow even more defiant. Mutual respect? What about respect for customers who pay good money to eat here? I've never been so insulted in my life. It was at this precise moment that a chair scraped back from the corner of the room. The sound wasn't particularly loud, but something about it commanded attention. Heads turned to see Clint Eastwood rising from his table, his tall frame unfolding with deliberate slowness. He adjusted the cuffs of his casual button-down shirt and began to make his way across the restaurant floor. The effect was immediate. Whispers rippled through the bistro as diners recognized the legendary actor and former mayor. Is that? It can't be. It is. It's Clint Eastwood. Karen, too caught up in her own indignation, remained oblivious to the approaching figure until he was standing directly beside her table. Only when his shadow fell across the tablecloth did she look up, irritation giving way to shock as she recognized who was standing there. Excuse me, Eastwood said, his voice carrying that distinctive gravelly quality familiar to millions of moviegoers worldwide. I couldn't help overhearing. Karen's mouth opened and closed, her righteous anger evaporating in an instant. Her remaining friends froze, wide-eyed and mortified. The entire restaurant had gone silent, every ear straining to catch what would happen next. Eastwood turned slightly toward Sophia, his expression softening. Sophia, isn't it? She nodded, seemingly as surprised as everyone else by this unexpected intervention. Yes, sir. I've been coming here for years, he continued, addressing her directly, but speaking loudly enough for everyone to hear. Always had excellent service from you. Professional, attentive, best in the house, if you ask me. Color rose in Sophia's cheeks at this praise, but she smiled with genuine pleasure. Thank you, Mr. Eastwood. That means a lot. Only then did he turn his attention to Karen, his gaze coolly appraising. The restaurant remained utterly silent, collectively holding its breath as one of Hollywood's most iconic figures stood face to face with a woman who had just revealed the worst of herself to a room full of strangers. What happened next would not only change the course of the afternoon, but would become a story retold throughout Carmel for years to come, a moment when privilege met principle, when cruelty confronted compassion, and when a living legend reminded everyone present about the true meaning of dignity. The silence in the Carmel Bay Bistro was absolute, as Clint Eastwood stood beside Karen's table, his imposing presence commanding the room without effort. Karen's face had drained of color, her earlier bravado evaporating like morning mist under a harsh sun. Her two remaining friends seemed to physically shrink in their seats, as if hoping to disappear entirely from this increasingly mortifying situation. Eastwood regarded Karen with that famous squint, the one that had stared down countless villains on the silver screen. When he finally spoke, his voice was low, but carried effortlessly throughout the hushed restaurant. You know, ma'am, in my 90-plus years, I've met all kinds of people, movie stars, presidents, royalty. He paused, letting the words hang in the air. And I've met folks like Sophia here, who work twice as hard for half the recognition. Karen's lips parted as if to speak, but no words emerged. Eastwood continued, unhurried and deliberate. I was watching you this whole time. Couldn't help but notice how you treated this young lady. He gestured towards Sophia, who stood with quiet dignity beside Manager Chen. And it got me thinking about something my mother taught me a long time ago. She said, the true measure of a person isn't how they treat their equals or superiors. It's how they treat those they perceive as beneath them. A murmur of approval rippled through the restaurant. Several diners nodded in agreement, while others leaned forward, not wanting to miss a word from the legendary actor. Now, I don't know you, ma'am, Eastwood continued, his gaze never wavering from Karen's increasingly uncomfortable expression. Maybe you're having a bad day. Maybe something's bothering you that has nothing to do with this restaurant or Sophia here, but from where I was sitting, it looked an awful lot like you were judging someone based on appearances rather than ability. One of Karen's friends nervously reached for her water glass, only to knock it over. The clatter seemed thunderous in the quiet restaurant, water spilling across the white tablecloth. Sophia, ever professional, immediately stepped forward with a napkin to help clean up the spill. Eastwood noticed this and nodded towards Sophia. See that? That's professionalism. That's class. Then back to Karen. That's someone doing their job well despite being treated poorly. Karen finally found her voice, though it emerged as little more than a whisper. Mr. Eastwood, I had no idea you were… I didn't… She swallowed hard, her composure crumbling. I'm a huge fan. Eastwood's expression didn't soften. Being a fan of my films is one thing, ma'am, but I'd be more impressed if you were a fan of treating people with dignity. He gestured around the restaurant. Everyone in this place deserves respect, from the dishwasher to the chef to the servers like Sophia. That's not just good manners, that's basic human decency. By now, Karen's face had flushed a deep crimson, the reality of her situation sinking in. Not only had she publicly humiliated herself with her behavior, but she had done so in front of Clint Eastwood, who was now calling her out in front of a restaurant full of people. I own a stake in this restaurant, Eastwood revealed, causing eyes to widen throughout the bistro. Have for years. And one of the things I'm proudest of is how David here runs the place, giving opportunities to folks who might not get them elsewhere, judging people on their merits rather than their limitations. David Chen straightened his shoulders, clearly moved by Eastwood's words of support. Sophia, too, seemed to stand a little taller, her eyes bright with emotion, but her composure intact. When I was mayor of this town, Eastwood continued, addressing not just Karen now, but the entire restaurant, I learned that a community is only as strong as how it treats its most vulnerable members. That's true of Carmel, and it's true of this bistro. He turned to Sophia with a respectful nod. I'd be honored if you'd continue to be my server today, Sophia. A spontaneous round of applause broke out among the diners, several of whom had tears in their eyes. Sophia's smile was radiant as she nodded. Of course, Mr. Eastwood. Thank you. Karen's remaining friends exchanged glances, clearly mortified and uncertain what to do next. One of them reached for her purse, ready to make a hasty exit. But Eastwood wasn't quite finished. He turned back to Karen, his expression shifting slightly, not softening exactly, but changing from disappointment to something more thoughtful. You know, we all make mistakes. We all have moments we're not proud of. The question is what we do next. For the first time since Eastwood had approached, Karen met his gaze directly. Something passed between them, a moment of understanding perhaps, as she seemed to finally grasp the full magnitude of her behavior. I'm sorry, she said quietly, first to Eastwood, then turning to Sophia with genuine remorse in her eyes. I'm so sorry, Sophia. There's no excuse for how I spoke to you. Sophia, displaying a grace that put Karen's earlier behavior to shame, offered a small smile. It's okay, ma'am. Would you still like me to take your order? This simple gesture of forgiveness seemed to affect Karen more deeply than all the public shame that had preceded it. Her eyes welled with tears as she nodded, unable to speak. Eastwood, sensing the shift in atmosphere, gave a small nod of approval. Well, looks like things are heading in the right direction now. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a business card, placing it on the table before Karen. My production office. Give us a call sometime next week. We might have something to talk about. Confusion flickered across Karen's tear-stained face. I don't understand. I'm working on a documentary, Eastwood explained, about prejudice and misconceptions, about how we judge people based on appearances and abilities. He glanced at Sophia, then back to Karen. Might be good to include someone who's experienced both sides of that equation in a single afternoon. With that, he gave a final nod to the table and turned to walk back to his own booth, leaving Karen staring after him in stunned silence. As he moved through the restaurant, diners nodded respectfully or murmured quiet thanks. One elderly woman reached out to touch his arm as he passed, whispering something that made him smile. By the time he returned to his corner table, the restaurant had begun to buzz again with conversation, though much of it was clearly about what they had just witnessed. Sophia had composed herself and was professionally taking the order from Karen's table, where the atmosphere had transformed from hostile to humbled. David Chen approached Eastwood's table, gratitude evident in his expression. Thank you for that, sir. You didn't have to step in. Eastwood looked up at him, the hint of a smile crinkling the corners of his eyes. Some things need saying, David, and sometimes people need to hear them from the right person at the right moment. As Chen returned to his duties, Eastwood watched Sophia moving efficiently between tables, her smile genuine, her manner professional, and he thought to himself that of all the roles he'd played in his long career, perhaps the most important were the small moments of real-life intervention, the times when being Clint Eastwood could make a difference not on screen, but in the actual world where people like Sophia faced challenges every day with quiet courage and dignity. The afternoon sun slanted through the windows of the Carmel Bay Bistro, casting long shadows across the worn wooden floors. The restaurant had returned to its normal rhythm, though an undercurrent of excitement still pulsed through the room. Diners spoke in hushed tones, recounting what they had witnessed, while the staff moved with a renewed sense of purpose, many casting appreciative glances toward Clint Eastwood's corner table, where he now sat enjoying his meal in peaceful solitude. Karen and her two remaining friends ate in subdued silence. The transformation in Karen was remarkable. Gone was the entitled aggression, replaced by a woman who kept her eyes lowered, occasionally dabbing at them with her napkin. When Sophia approached to refill water glasses or check on their meals, Karen would offer a tentative smile, her voice soft as she thanked the young waitress. The card Eastwood had given her sat on the table beside her plate, a tangible reminder of the extraordinary turn this ordinary Tuesday had taken. At a nearby table, an older couple who had witnessed the entire confrontation observed the changed dynamics with satisfaction. Never thought I'd see Dirty Harry delivering a life lesson in a seafood restaurant, the husband murmured to his wife, but he sure picked the right moment. His wife nodded, watching Sophia as she efficiently cleared plates from another table. That young lady handled herself with more grace than most people would have. Can't imagine keeping my composure if someone had spoken to me that way. As the lunch service began winding down, a young man entered the restaurant, his eyes scanning the room until they landed on Sophia. His face lit up, and those watching could immediately see the family resemblance. The same almond-shaped eyes, the same warm smile. This was clearly Sophia's brother, coming to pick her up after her shift. He waved to her, then noticed the famous actor in the corner and froze momentarily, recognition widening his eyes. Sophia approached her brother, speaking to him quietly, before guiding him toward Eastwood's table. The legendary actor looked up from his coffee, his weathered face crinkling into a smile, as Sophia made introductions. Mr. Eastwood, this is my brother Miguel. He's a huge fan of your films, Sophia said, her voice carrying a note of pride. He's studying film at community college. Eastwood extended his hand to the awestruck young man. Good to meet you, Miguel. Your sister's quite a remarkable person. Miguel, finding his voice, shook Eastwood's hand with reverence. Sir, it's an honor. And yes, Sophia's always been my hero. She's the reason I believe anything is possible. This simple declaration, spoken without an ounce of self-consciousness, touched everyone within earshot. At Karen's table, her friends exchanged meaningful glances, while Karen herself seemed to shrink further into her seat, the contrast between her earlier cruelty and this display of sibling devotion making her behavior appear even more shameful. Eastwood gestured for Miguel to join him for a moment. "Tell me about these films you're studying," he said, giving the young man his full attention. As Miguel nervously but enthusiastically began discussing his coursework, David Chen approached Karen's table with their check. Karen reached for it immediately, waving away her friend's offers to contribute. "This one's on me," she said firmly. When she handed her credit card to Chen, she added in a lowered voice, "And I'd like to pay for Mr. Eastwood's meal as well. Anonymously, please." Chen studied her for a moment, weighing her sincerity before nodding. "Of course, ma'am." After settling the bill, Karen reached for Eastwood's business card, tucking it carefully into her wallet. She stood, gathering her purse and jacket, her companions following suit. Instead of heading directly for the exit, however, Karen took a deep breath and detoured to where Sophia was now wiping down a nearby table, her shift nearly over. "Excuse me, Sophia," Karen said, her voice lacking its earlier sharp edge. "I wanted to thank you for your service today, especially—" Her voice faltered momentarily. "Especially considering how I behaved initially. You showed me more kindness than I deserved." Sophia straightened, meeting Karen's gaze with that same unshakable dignity. "Everyone has bad days, ma'am, and everyone deserves a second chance." The simplicity of this forgiveness brought fresh tears to Karen's eyes. "I don't know if Mr. Eastwood was serious about that documentary, but whether he was or not, I'd like to make amends somehow." She fumbled in her purse and pulled out her own business card. "I work in public relations. If there's ever any way I could help you, or any cause you care about, please call me." Sophia accepted the card with a nod. "Thank you. I volunteer with the Down Syndrome Association of Central California. We're always looking for people to help spread awareness." Karen's expression softened with genuine interest. "I'd like to hear more about that. Perhaps we could talk sometime, maybe over coffee." As this exchange took place, Eastwood watched from his table, where he was still engaged in conversation with Miguel. The hint of a satisfied smile played at the corners of his mouth, the kind of smile rarely seen on the tough characters he'd portrayed throughout his career. Meanwhile, the restaurant had almost emptied, the lunch crowd dispersing back to offices and tourist activities. A few staff members were beginning their end-of-shift routines, folding napkins and resetting tables for the dinner service. The afternoon light had taken on a golden quality, bathing the bistro in a warm glow that seemed fitting for the day's unexpected resolution. Karen and her friends finally made their way to the exit, pausing briefly at Eastwood's table. Karen summoned her courage once more. "Mr. Eastwood, thank you for the wake-up call. I won't forget it." Eastwood regarded her thoughtfully. "Just make it count, ma'am. That's all any of us can do." She nodded, understanding the weight of his simple advice, before continuing toward the door. As they left, one of her friends could be overheard saying, "You know, Karen, I've never seen that side of you before. It was pretty awful." Karen's response drifted back into the restaurant. "I've never seen it either. But I'm certainly seeing it now, and I don't like it one bit." After they had gone, David Chen approached Eastwood's table once more. "Your meal has been taken care of, sir." Anonymously, at the customer's request. Eastwood raised an eyebrow, then nodded slowly. "Seems like someone might be starting to get the message." As Sophia's shift ended, she gathered her things from the staff room and returned to the dining area where her brother waited. Eastwood was just preparing to leave himself, settling his worn leather jacket over his shoulders. He stopped by the siblings on his way out. "Sophia," he said, his voice carrying that distinctive gravelly tone. "My production company is always looking for people with your kind of work ethic. If you're ever interested in a change of scene, give my office a call." Sophia's face lit up with surprise and gratitude. "Really? I mean, thank you, Mr. Eastwood. I love working here, but options are good," Eastwood finished for her with a knowing nod. "Everyone deserves those." He turned to Miguel. "And you, young man, keep studying those films. This industry needs fresh perspectives." With that, he gave them a final nod and made his way toward the door, pausing only to exchange a few words with David Chen. The restaurant staff watched him go with a mixture of awe and appreciation, knowing they had witnessed something remarkable, not just a celebrity sighting, but a moment of genuine human connection and transformation. As the door closed behind Eastwood's tall figure, Sophia turned to her brother, her eyes shining with emotion and excitement. "Can you believe what happened today? Wait until Mom hears about this." Miguel shook his head in wonder. "No one's going to believe it. Clint Eastwood defending my sister and offering her a job. It sounds like something from a movie." David Chen overheard this as he passed by. "Sometimes real life is better than the movies," he said with a smile. "And today, Sophia, you were the star." Outside the bistro, life in Carmel by the Sea continued its peaceful pace. Tourists strolled the picturesque streets, unaware of the drama that had unfolded within the restaurant's walls. But for those who had witnessed it, something had shifted, a reminder that dignity isn't determined by ability, that respect should never be conditional, and that sometimes the most powerful lessons come from unexpected sources. And somewhere in town, a humbled Karen was already making plans to contact the Down Syndrome Association, the weight of Eastwood's business card in her purse serving as a constant reminder that second chances are precious, and that true redemption begins with recognizing our own failings. The day that had started with cruelty had somehow transformed into something else entirely, a testament to the power of standing up for what's right and to the quiet dignity of those who face prejudice with grace and resilience every single day.